Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wednesday of week 3. We're going to start today by doing some breathing. And so I hope that you are all set with your notes page, that you're there hanging out with your lab folks. So I just want you to bring your attention. We're going to bring ourselves to really being present at this place and time. Really take some good breaths. And as you do that, just become aware of your body. And when I say this, I mean to become aware of it in a different way. We've thought about the moving of our chests and our stomachs as we breathe in and breathe out. We've thought about the air moving over our nostrils. So that's all becoming aware of our bodies. But in this case, I'd like you to recognize that every molecule that makes up your body existed before it was part of you. Every water molecule came into your body in the form of something that you ate or drank. Picture yourself sipping that cup of tea or coffee in the morning. And while it's in your cup, it's not your body. But then you drink, you take it in, and now some of that water becomes part of your body, becomes part of your blood. Before that water was your tea or coffee, it existed for a long time in other places. That water has been rain and rivers and oceans and clouds as it moved through the water cycle. And now it has become part of you for some unknown period of time. And so as you breathe in and out and think about your molecules, you can recognize that every one of those molecules before has been soil or stone or sea. Your body is made entirely of elements that have been other things and will be other things, other places again. You may experience some deep revelation by doing this that you are not separate or cut off from the rest of nature. We are part of it. So take another breath or two. And as you take this in, as you think about this, if things are coming up for you around this idea, feel free to drop those into your Zoom chat. The YouTube chat is turned off, but you have your Zoom rooms where you can put your comments anytime, really. So as we move into today's class is called Origins. And we think about, I want you to think about an example of a story that you told yourself today. So it might seem like a weird question on the forefront, but I want to define that in this class, the TAs and I will often use the word story. It's going to be a theme that runs throughout BiSci. And I want to define what we mean by that, by story. And by defining it, we can see how our stories subconsciously affect us. So, this is what we mean by story. So, story is a way of seeing a belief that becomes part of our truth. So, what's a story that you told yourself today? Some that came to mind really quickly for me were things like, "Hey, my story is I didn't have time for breakfast today." Well, why is that your truth? And is it your truth? Really? We've all had the same number of hours already today, no matter where you are in the world. So you say you don't have time for breakfast, but is it really the truth is that you didn't make time for breakfast? For me, this morning, getting the boys out the door to school after 2 snow days and delay, it was pretty tricky, and so I could say, "Oh my gosh, Henry made me so angry this morning." But did Henry make me angry? No, I chose to be angry. Nobody can make me angry. It's that I'm choosing to react in that way. So my story was that Henry made me angry. But in reality, the truth was I chose to be in the angry path. This could happen with the phrase, I'm sorry, I can't go to that thing with you tonight because I have to do my homework. No, actually the story is that you're choosing to do your homework. And so by saying I have to go to class, no, actually you're choosing to go to class. You don't have to do anything. And so thinking about how this shapes how it shapes our perception of what we experience and how we have the power of choice over our stories. I can totally claim my anger with Henry this morning. I was angry, but Henry didn't make me that way. It's not Henry's fault. I can't blame him. It's because I chose to be angry. And so then by doing that, I'm taking it in and making it me and making it my choice and thinking, well, maybe there was a different choice. Maybe I could have proceeded in a different way. And so maybe that would have made my morning different if I had chosen differently. Um, and so being aware of what those stories are. Here, this guy, Viktor Frankl, what I'm talking about is that space of choice. And that's what he says in this statement. Between stimulus and response, there's a space. And that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Viktor Frankl was a celebrated Austrian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor. And he remains best known for his remarkable writings in 1946, a psychological memoir that he wrote called Man's Search for Meaning. And it was really a meditation on the gruesome experience that he had in Auschwitz and what that taught him about the primary purpose of life, that the quest for meaning with those who survived. Frankl also said, everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And so going back to that quote from the other day about choosing our destiny, we get to choose our own story, and the power in that is huge. So today we're going to talk a lot about stories. And the first one I'm going to share with you is a story that belongs to the Potawatomi tribe of Native Americans, Indians that lived here first and continue as a tribe here in the United States. And this is the story of Sky Woman falling onto Turtle Island. In the beginning, there was Sky World, and a woman that inhabited that world slipped and fell into, or rather through, a hole. She fell like a maple seed pirouetting on an autumn breeze. A column of light streamed from the hole in the sky world, marking her path where only darkness had been before. It took her a long time to fall. In fear, or maybe in hope, she clutched a bundle tightly in her hand. Hurtling downward, she saw only dark water below. But in that emptiness, there were many eyes gazing up at that sudden shaft of light. There they saw a small object, a mere dust mote in the beam, and as it grew closer, they could see that it was a woman, arms outstretched, long black hair billowing behind as she spiraled toward them. The geese nodded at one another and rose together from the water in a wave of goose music. She felt the beat of their wings as they flew beneath to break her fall. Far from the only home she'd ever known, she caught her breath at the warm embrace of soft feathers as they carried her downward. And so it began. The geese could not hold the woman above the water for much longer, and so they called a council to decide what to do. Resting on their wings, she saw them all gather, the loons, otters, swans, beavers, fish of all kinds. A great turtle floated in their midst and offered his back for her to rest upon. Gratefully, she stepped from the goose wings onto the dome of his shell. The others understood that she needed land for her home, and they discussed how they might serve her need. The deep divers among them had heard of mud at the bottom of the water and agreed to go find some. Loon dove first, but the distance was too far, and after a long while he surfaced with nothing to show for his efforts. One by one, the other animals offered to help: otter, beaver, sturgeon, but the depth, the darkness, and the pressures were too great for even the strongest of swimmers. They returned gasping for air with their heads ringing, and some did not return at all. Soon, only little Muskrat was left, the weakest diver of all. He volunteered to go while the others looked on doubtfully. His small legs flailed as he worked his way downward, and he was gone for a very long time. They waited and waited for him to return, fearing the worst for their relative, and eventually a stream of bubbles rose with the small, limp body of Muskrat. He had given his life to aid this helpless human, but then the others noticed that his paw was tightly clenched, and when they opened it, there was a small handful of mud. Turtle said, "Here, put it on my back and I will hold it." Sky Woman bent and spread the mud with her hands across the the shell of the turtle. Moved by the extraordinary gifts of the animals, she sang in thanksgiving and then began to dance, her feet caressing the earth. The land grew and grew as she danced her thanks, and from the dab of mud on Turtle's back until the whole world was made. Not by Sky Woman alone, but from the alchemy of all the animals' gifts, coupled with their deep gratitude. Together, they formed what we know today as Turtle Island, our home. Like any good guest, remember that Sky Woman had not come empty-handed. The bundle was still clenched in her hand. As she toppled from the hole in the sky world, she had reached out to grab onto the tree of life that grew there, and in her grasp were its branches, fruits and seeds, and all kinds of plants. These she scattered onto the new ground and carefully tended each one until the world turned from brown to green. Sunlight streamed through the hole in the sky world, allowing the seeds to flourish. Wild grasses, flowers, trees, and medicines spread everywhere. And now that the animals too had plenty to eat, many came to live with her on Turtle Island. This is an origin story from the oral tradition of the Potawatomi Nation and others through the Great Lakes region. It was citizen of that nation and botanist by trade. Her name is Robin Wall Kimmerer, and she tells this story in her lovely book, this one, Braiding Sweetgrass. So she is a botanist, which means that she is trained to ask questions of nature with the tools of science. And she is a member of the citizen Potawatomi Nation. She embraces the notion that plants and animals are teachers. I like to imagine what it would be like if this was my story. Can you imagine having this as a story you listened to as a small child? There's no specific creator, just those beings working together to make such wonder and beauty. The children that hear Sky Woman from the time they are born, they know in their bones that they have responsibility that flows between humans and Earth. That's their way of seeing. That's their story. That's their belief and their truth. And that's what it means to have the power of stories. So take a moment and what's coming up for you about the power of stories? You might think about your own creation, beginning of the world story that you know or that you've heard, something that you take stock in, part of your story. Or you might think about what it's like to have these other traditions where the story can be something quite different, and quite beautiful, and how it shapes who we are and how we act. So take 3 minutes in your group to consider this. Um, what does it mean? What's coming up for you about the power of stories? There were other earlier people that also had relationship of wonder with their universe, especially those phenomena they could not rationally understand. And so to solve these mysteries, they created a vast pantheon of gods and goddesses to explain anything that was beyond their understanding. Thunder, tides, earthquakes, volcanoes, infertility, plagues, and even love. For the early Greeks, the ebb and flow of the ocean was attributed to the shifting moods of Poseidon. The seasonal change to winter was caused by the planet's sadness at Persephone's annual abduction into the underworld. For the Romans, volcanoes were believed to be the home of Vulcan. He was blacksmith to the gods. He worked in a giant forge beneath the mountain, causing flames to spew out of his chimney. The ancients invented countless gods to explain not only the mysteries of their planet, but also the mysteries of their own beings. In Greece, love was the result of being targeted by Eros, and pandemics, were explained as a punishment sent by Apollo. When these ancient people experienced gaps in their understanding, they filled those gaps with stories that they could understand and hold on to. Countless stories filled those countless gaps, and yet over the centuries, scientific knowledge increased. People figured things out about what's happening in the natural world. And so, what happens to those stories? They aren't gaps anymore, and the stories gradually disappear or begin to shrink. And some of them go away gently, some of them do just shrink away, but some of them were held on to. It's a messy process. It's a messy process for culture to abandon or change or shift its stories. Beliefs are deeply etched on us from a very young age by those that we love and trust most, our parents and our teachers and our religious leaders. And therefore, these shifts of story, shifts of culture require work and reflection and sometimes discomfort. So, the story, the Genesis creation story of both Christianity and Judaism, one of the most common creation stories around the world, because the number of Christians and the number of Jews are they're just a lot. And so this is a major story. And I would guess that many of you know this story. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Story created by humans that is said to be divinely inspired. And this story has given you, some of you, and me meaning. If this is your story, or if you have a different story, just consider for a moment how that story has shaped you and your beliefs and your views and your actions. Because it has. That story has, this was the story that I grew up with, and I know that it shaped how I think about the world around me, the natural world around me. I looked up creation myth as another word for story, on Wikipedia, and there were many creation myths listed there, not to mention all the ones that aren't listed. I found it to be very interesting to consider the origins of these stories and how they shaped people's lives all over the planet, all over the world, through all different times and all different circumstances. This is Joan Chittister. She's a native Pennsylvanian. She got her PhD at Penn State. And she's a Benedictine nun. She's also been the co-chair of the Global Peace Initiative for Women. At age 16, as she was about to join this faith tradition, she was about to become a nun at age 16. She was listening to a speaker, and she prompted the question, how do you know that God exists? How do you prove it? And the answer came back to her, you can't prove that it's true, but you can't prove that it's not true. Belief is always a choice. And so, whatever your story is, or however your story will evolve, is up to you. It is your choice. It is my choice. Science's response to this question is that how did Earth, our universe, come to be? The Big Bang Theory is still one of the most popular theories, although there are other ones out there, and there is constant research still happening. It's not like the Big Bang is it. We still don't know that for sure. It's the best thing that scientists have come up with, but it's not the for sure, for certain kind of thing. First, there was light, just like in the beginning of the story that I just mentioned. The expanding universe that continues to expand began with this light 14 billion years ago. Why the light? It's the ultimate mystery. We don't know. So science has back calculated this based on background radiation from that original blast that's still detectable on our planet. So sometimes religion is at odds with science, and sometimes it's right in line. What if 14 billion years ago, God decided to show himself or herself? And I'm not saying that's what you should believe. I'm not saying that's what I believe. I'm just asking a question and trying to provoke some questions from you and thoughts. If that's the case, thinking back to dualism, can you hold two or more things at once if you want to? It's hard to say. What I do know for certain is that bonding is at the heart of our cosmos. Bonding is at the heart of the cosmos. Gravity and energy are energizing forces. They're engendering relationships. Those first elementary particles of quarks and leptons bond in stable relationships, and then gravity keeps those in relationship. It's this allurement between opposites that gives birth to atoms. So this way, the universe has become more and more and more complex. Bonding, is that another word? We just talked about the god Eros. Is it love? Is it connection? Is it a need for connection? Bonding is at the heart of the matter. It's at the heart of matter. So what does that mean for us? Well, it could mean a lot of things. The thing I'm going to point out right now is that the Big Bang is in you. The Big Bang is in me. I alluded to this during our opening centering piece. All of the oxygen, no, excuse me, all of the hydrogen that was formed ever, all of the hydrogen that was ever formed on this planet formed 14 billion years ago. No hydrogen has been made since that point. And it was that hydrogen that gave rise to the galaxies and the first stars. And so given that water, all the hydrogen in my glass of water is 14 billion years old, and that hydrogen is the most abundant atom in our bodies. How old am I? How old are you? Our human ages might be 20 or 40 or 60 or 80, but the stuff inside of you is 14 billion years old. All of these elements have been around for a really long time. All that water that's in you. So the death of stars birthed Earth. The star is a huge ball of hydrogen gas compressed by gravity and then fusing into helium, which releases an enormous amount of heat and light. Our sun is nearly 1 million times larger than Earth, and it's 93 million miles away. And yet it lights and heats our planet. So all of these stars have they have finite lives, excuse me. Some die with a whimper and some with a huge bang. And then those heavy elements get released. Gas clouds condense and gravity happens and they form solar systems. So these explosions are constantly forming the basic stuff of planets in our universe. I'd like you to take in this video.
What is the most astounding fact you can share with us about the universe?
The most astounding fact
The most astounding fact.
is the knowledge that the atoms that comprise life on Earth, the atoms that make up the human body, are traceable to the crucibles that cooked light elements into heavy elements in their core under extreme temperatures and pressures. These stars, the high mass ones among them, went unstable in their later years. They collapsed and then exploded, scattering their enriched guts across the galaxy. Guts made of carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and all the fundamental ingredients of life itself. These ingredients become part of gas clouds that condense, collapse, form the next generation of solar systems, stars with orbiting planets. And those planets now have the ingredients for life itself. So that when I look up at the night sky, and I know that, yes, we are part of this universe, we are in this universe, but perhaps more important than both of those facts is that the universe is in us. When I reflect on that fact, I look up. Many people feel small because they're small and the universe is big, but I feel big because my atoms came from those stars.
This is your biggest story. You are stardust. The universe is not a thing out there. I am the universe in the form of Jen. I am a compilation of universe bits all put together in some very incredible way to make up who I am in my absolute uniqueness. And that's true for each and every one of us, each and every one of you. Stardust. And that's what we all have in common. And that's what we have in common with absolutely every person on this planet, with every living thing on this planet, with every non-living thing on this planet. We are connected in this way. So I'd like you to take a time in your group to talk about this. Take 4 minutes and see what this means. What does this really mean for you? What comes to mind? How does this make you feel? This is your biggest story. So someone acknowledged in one of the groups that the universe feels so foreign, and yet to hear about it in this way makes it feel closer. The universe isn't out there, it's here. And that can make us feel closer to Earth as well. Somebody said it makes me feel purposeful and that I am intentional and exist for a reason. And that is absolutely true. Feeling so whole and connected when we see stars in the sky. Those connections are so vital. Take a moment and write this down in your notes for today. What you choose to believe about your origin profoundly affects your understanding of who you are and why you are here. So, for instance, reading the story of Sky Woman falling, I can't help but wonder how different our society, our culture might be today if we were all raised with an origin story that hinges on gratitude and interdependence. Being interdependent, not independent, but interdependent. If we all knew in our bones that sacred responsibility that flows between humans and Earth, what would our culture look like? This quote by Brian Swim just blows me away every time. You might want to write this one down too. Take hydrogen gas and leave it alone for 14 billion years, and it becomes rose bushes, giraffes, and Mozart symphonies. It's pretty astounding. And it leaves me feeling awestruck. And so I have one more video that I would like to share with you. And then we'll have a moment to talk about this. This is going to take me a second to get this going, but
Eminent psychologist Nicholas Humphrey has written of the biological advantage of being awestruck. How fortuitous, he says, for a species to find that its own ability to contemplate, to marvel at its own existence, has been evolutionarily advantageous. In other words, it has been biologically selected for because it informs our life with a sense of cosmic significance that makes us work harder to persist and to survive. In other words, awe has helped us survive. You know, a recent study out of Stanford on the subject of awe kind of validates this idea. They have found that regular incidences of awe leave residual benefits upon the individual that persist, such as increased feelings of empathy and compassion towards others, increased feelings of altruism, and increased feelings of general well-being. In this study, they defined awe as an experience of such perceptual expansion, such perceptual vastness, that you literally have to reconfigure, upgrade your mental schemata just to accommodate, just to take in the scale of the experience. This is amazing. We've all felt this before. The first time we stared upon the Grand Canyon or succumbed to the immersive power of an IMAX film. But perhaps the most exquisite account of the experience of awe was articulated by the brilliant Ross Anderson when writing about the Hubble Space Telescope. Pay attention. He says that the Hubble has given us nothing less than an ontological awakening, a forceful reckoning of what is, allowing us to contemplate space and time on a scale just shy of infinite. Why? He says gazing upon the famous deep field photograph literally allows us to mainline the whole of time through the optic nerve. To fit something so impossibly large to something so impossibly small. It's incredible. He says through the sheer aesthetic force of its discoveries, the Hubble distills the impossibly complex abstractions of astrophysics into these singular expressions of color and light, vindicating Keith's famous couplet, beauty is truth, truth, beauty.
So being awestruck benefits us in ways that we can't even imagine, that expands us in ways that we will feel for our whole lives. And so when you think about this and think about the concept of story, I feel as though right now and in our time and place as individuals in this class, but also as culture, it feels as though there are stories that are shifting. I'd like you to take 3 minutes in your group and think about what is it that you feel shifting, either as an individual or in our culture. What's shifting? What stories are shifting right now? So, my last note for you today is that next Tuesday is the first of the Penn State Mental Health Days. And what we've been working with is thinking about all of our equipment, thinking about how to make choices using all of our equipment. And I want to encourage you to think and to feel and to intuit your way into how to spend that mental health day. What's best for you? What is best for you? What is the best use of your time that will make you feel like you? Will it help to be outside? Will it help to get some extra rest? Will it help to buy a box of tea and enjoy that with a friend safely? What's best for you? I really encourage you to live your way into the way that you spend your time that day. Really honor yourself with your choices. Thanks very much. I hope that your labs go well this week, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.